It's time for the B-A-Q-A. A, the B-A-Q-A. What you say? The B-A-Q-A with Mandi. The B-A-Q-A with Tiffany. The B-A-Q-A. Hey! A brighter mission question and answer. Yes, we are Tiffany and Mandi. And although we're not your therapist, your personal financial advisor, your accountant, your attorney. We are two smart brown girls who know a thing about money, personal finances, career, and business. And so, we're in studio just to answer your questions.
Yeah, and today we got Real Talk Tina Whitaker in the hot seat. I had to read your whole name because that's amazing. Thanks so much for joining BA. So wait, y'all already know each other?
Well, we had taped before, Mandi, when you was out with the cood, but I guess there was some technical difficulties. So we got Real Talk Tina back in the studio.
Thank you for having me. Okay. You're also my mentor because I'm your mentee.
Yeah,
it's been so helpful to me. You just dropped so much great information to improve my life as an entrepreneur, and I just love it.
Thank you, because Mandi was out, and so we were like, we had to get some guests, and so I was like, you know what? While Mandi's out, let me get some business guests. So I dropped in the mentee chat and said, hey, if any mentees want to come on the show, ask some business questions or even personal finance questions, come on through. So yeah, that's what's going on.
All right, well, it'll be my first time hearing your question. What's your question, Tina?
Well, I think last time I asked, it was definitely about finances. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a realtor. I talk about just real estate. I do real estate here in Atlanta, Georgia, but I also do, I have a blog. I write about relationships and travel. So the market has slowed a bit. It's still a great market, but it definitely was a transition for me. And my finances were not good to start with after the pandemic. I had some health issues, I had surgery, and I was just getting back from that. And then now my income as an entrepreneur, real estate agent has stopped completely. So it's not just like I had debt before. Now I'm late on my rent. And they don't have a ban where if you're late on your rent, you don't get evicted. They start that process right away. So I'm just wondering what to do. I'm trying to try to get clients and trying to do all these marketing. And meanwhile, I'm dealing with where do I live? How do I pay off my debt? How do I keep my car? And my family's getting tired of me. So it's stressful.
First, I want to say, honestly, Tina, it's so crazy that you said this because I just saw an article today, literally, like on, I think it was Yahoo Finance, and it was like, I forget what percentage of realtors are late on their rent. Like, we're late on the rent in November. Like, that's a number that they're watching. A number of realtors are late on their rent. It's a number that they're watching, like, as an indicator to what's happening in the housing market. Because less homes are being sold. So homes are being sold for, home prices are going down, not rapidly so, but they're going down. And less people are listing because, they said, the listing numbers are down to like 2020 levels. So what you're feeling is not Tina made a mistake thing. It's this is what's happening. So I just want you to acknowledge, because sometimes we have to acknowledge that, like, certainly, it's good to take responsibility for like where we are, which is important, but it's also important to acknowledge that there are outside circumstances that are aiding or creating the environment. So the environment that you're in is not one that you created. As far as like these outside circumstances.
And that's good to know because sometimes I think I'm the only one. Like, no one else is late on their rent. Like, I'm in my 40s. I'm not 20 anymore. It's just me. So that's comforting to know, but it's disappointing as well.
Yeah. How long have you been in the real estate business?
I've actually been a realtor for 6 years.
6 years. Okay.
I do.
This is your first kind of experience with a real difficult sort of housing economy, right?
No, I mean, I do want to just say to everyone, check your adrenals. I had a lot of adrenal issues, so I had to get my adrenal removed. So I wasn't able to work a lot of those years where I was sick. So I have had just a lot of stops and goes. It's not just this time. It's just that I was actually getting on my feet and doing quite well, closing every single month. I felt healthy, and I was like paying off my debt. I was just so proud to pay off my debt. During the pandemic, I did not have a car. I actually did have a chance to travel, but only on a bootstring budget, a very low budget. And then I came back and I tried to build myself up again, and I didn't have a car, and I was finally able to buy a car this year, pay it every month automatically, pay my rent automatically. I was doing great. So I'm 42, and I just feel like during college was probably the last time I had a roommate, and it was just so problematic. Maybe I was younger then. I just feel like me as a very sensitive person, I like space to myself. I just feel like it would be a worse problem, but maybe I need to come down and really look at the situation and say, I can't have what I want. I need to do what I need to do now. What do you think?
I think you got to throw out that version of yourself that you're comparing yourself to, like where you think you ought to be right now at your age, which you're still young. Okay.
Girl, I'm 43. Girl, look at us.
You're doing very well.
Mandy's the only baby on here.
But Tiffany wasn't always doing well. Tiffany,
No, not at all. Girl, I had
we both had our rock bottoms.
Yes.
But you really, I think it's like, we think we're comparing ourselves to like Instagram models, but I think so often it's like that version of ourselves that we think we ought to be wherever we are in our lives. Because that person, like comparing yourself to her and where you think you are, like that's holding you back from saving yourself and from, taking the steps. It's only temporary. Like you're going to get back on your feet. The housing market will bounce back. It does. But for now, I think it's about what are the resources you can lean on for help because you need help. A roommate is one option. Do you have family you could stay with in the meantime?
I think me and my family both know that they'd rather give me money to hold on before we move in back together. My family is in Michigan. I just don't feel like it's a good market for me to prosper in and environment, but I do appreciate my family for all they've done.
So I just say, like, during times like this, it's like you do what you have to do until you do what you can do, what you want to do. So you do what you have to do until you do what you want to do. And so ideally, the solution would be to do whatever I want, and then it works out. But, there are moments we all know in life that that's just not how that goes. Sometimes it's like, okay, so like when I lost my job when I was a teacher, and I remember I was 30, I ended up moving back home with my parents. It was not ideal because they're Nigerian and the curfew was still midnight. They don't give a damn how old you are. I was literally like 30. My dad said, if you come back 1 minute after midnight, this door will be locked. You will sleep wherever you were. I was like, what kind of life is this? It was a life of a 30-year-old who didn't have the mortgage money for her place. And if I was going to live with my parents, this is what the rule was. Then I moved in with my sister for like a year. I told her 3 months. She was like, girl. After like a year, she was sick of my stuff. It was like, get out. And then I moved in with like a friend of mine who was renting a room in a home. And so it was like 4 or 5 of us each renting a room. I did that honestly until 34. So from like 29 to 34, I was like bopping around and bouncing, trying to figure it out. And so is it something that I'm wanting to do? Like, oh my gosh, this is so great, renting a room. Like I just came home from jail. No. But it's what I had to do in that moment to create a financial foundation for myself. Same. I had like this old raggedy car that I didn't really drive. I either walked everywhere or took public transportation. And so it wasn't easy, but I also reminded myself this is temporary, because I am actively working on a stronger financial foundation. I had all this debt that I had to get rid of. The house, they lost to foreclosure. But I started to build my business from a place of underspending, finally. And then I got on my feet. And so I just say all that to say that like, whether you're 42, 52, I get it because it feels like I'm supposed to be grown. And I thought at 30, I was supposed to be grown. I shouldn't be going through this, but the truth is, okay, understood, Tiffany, but we're here. So what you gonna do? Because the thing is that if you avoid making the choices, life gonna make the choice for you.
Yeah. I did actually talk to a lawyer, and he did say that some of my options were to file Chapter 7. And that way I can start all over. I know when I say, oh, I moved to France, they're like, oh gosh, this girl is not trying to save. But when I lived in France, I lived in a studio by myself with my dog. It costs €485 a month, and I didn't have a car. I took the bus. I walked everywhere. I was living the life on a real small budget. So I'm really thinking about filing Chapter 7, going overseas, and just building my life there if I can.
I feel like the filing bankruptcy, I mean, that option is there for a reason. There's no shame in taking that option.
Very scary.
Is most of your debt, you said it's medical and also like consumer debt, like credit cards?
I actually didn't do that smart thing. I tried to pay all my medical bills, and I put all my monthly expenses on my credit card. I had 800 credit at the time. I had 800 credit all my adult life. And then when I just couldn't keep up, I put everything on the credit card that was not medical. So I have about $50,000 worth of debt.
Wow. Yeah, with medical debt, I mean, Tiff, what kind of advice do you give when it comes to like which one? I know we can't turn back the clock, but when it comes to deciding, do I pay down this medical debt versus, putting my life on credit? What do you think about that, Tiff? I know that there's like low income assistance, like for medical bills and things like that at hospitals.
Mm-hmm. And two, they have a law in place where like the way medical debt hits your credit is not as detrimental as it once used to be, because they acknowledge it's not you being financially quote unquote irresponsible. So just in general, like if anyone's listening and they're having to choose between medical debt and their bills, with the money that you actually have that coming in, medical debt, there's more leeway with how to navigate from creditors, from the credit bureaus. And so if you could only choose one, unless not paying the medical debt will mean that you can't have access to whatever the medicine is, that's different, obviously, but yeah, then paying like your personal bills and then working it out with medical debt, because there are it might be a lot of paperwork, but there are some things in place. Like I call myself one time like dyeing like my hair, because my friend Joy used to always like when because I used to get gray. Like I've been getting gray since I was like 26. So I started with like one gray eyelash, and now like all my eyelashes are gray. But mascara, you can't see it. But I still have little grays, which they will stay, because my friend Joy used to what I thought was dye my hair every a few months or so, but she was using a rinse. I didn't know that. And then one day I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it myself. Joyce, this is one of my many roommates when I was living in the house. Like we all just came home from jail. So Joy was like, she always dyed her hair and whatever. I was like, oh, can you, I have like one or two grays. And she was like, oh, I thought it was I thought it was a dye. So then I decided I was going to do it myself, because she had done it a couple of times. I was like, I can do it. And she wasn't living in the house anymore. And the next morning I was like, oof, like I had this like bubble under my skin that grew. I don't know if anybody remembers the movie Mask from Cher. No, literally my whole face was like, it was like liquid under my face. It exploded, and I was so scared, but I had no money, so I was like, maybe it'll go away. So I called my mother, and it was like, my mother's a nurse. I sent her a picture. She was like, are you kidding me? Tiffany, you need to go to the emergency room right away. You're having an extreme allergic reaction. And I Googled it, that some people are allergic to black hair dye. You're supposed to do a test. I did not know. Because I assumed I had been getting it done, but it was a rinse, which is not the same. There's something in black hair dye that some people have a severe allergic reaction to, and ding, 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 I was one of them people. But I waited it out for like 2 days until it got worse and worse. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And literally there's a hospital, like not even a half a block up the street. Actually, the hospital where I was born, St. Michael's in Newark. I lived on the same street. I said, I'm about to live here, die here. I was born here. So I went to St. Michael's. Please, they gave me the equivalent of like liquid Benadryl. I was like, wait, I didn't even think to take Benadryl. So they gave me the equivalent of liquid Benadryl and a prescription for more Benadryl. And then, it went down. I got an $800 bill, that's why I was afraid of. And I was like, for liquid Benadryl, I can't afford an $800 bill. So I waited, they sent me the first letter, the second, then the letter became pink, and then the letter was red, which is like pay now or else. And so at the time, I remember my sister at the time was dating her now husband, who was in medical school. He was like, no, call them because you might be able to negotiate. And so I was like, really? And he said, yes, because he was like interning at a hospital. And so I called the hospital and was like, I really don't have it. Basically I'm broke. What can I do? And they're like, well, what can you afford? I was like, $400. And they said, okay. I was like, wait, $200? They're like, no, girl, you just. And so it was $400, but I paid it slowly. But it was kind of like the first time that I realized, wait, what? Medical debt, there's a lot more leeway. And so of course you didn't know that then, but you know now. Hold that thought before we continue. Let's go to break because, we got more to talk about. And here's the thing. I know $50,000 sounds like a lot of money, but at one point I was $300,000 in debt. And now I'm completely debt free. $300. So of course a lot of it was mortgage, but $35,000 was credit card debt. $50,000 was student loan debt. And then I had my mortgage, to my home. But I'm just saying all that to say that, that yes, it can seem very daunting and overwhelming. But there is a way out. But it typically starts with taking stock of where you are now and getting yourself to a place where you're living under your means so you can start putting a plan in place. So if that means moving to France and finding an inexpensive studio and starting your business with with your overhead really low so you can pay your bills and work on your debt at the same time, and filing bankruptcy, if that's what it looks like, then that's what it looks like. If it looks like getting a roommate to come live with you for 6 months to a year, if that's what that looks like, there's no one way, but there has to be something that you're doing. Standing still is not the answer. We know that.
I do, and I do get frozen. This weekend I put my car out on Turo, so I made just under $200 for the weekend. It's not great, but it's something. I started looking for other real estate related jobs, temps jobs that I can do. And then when I did have money, I was negotiating with each credit card. So I was able to negotiate about 50 to 80% off my bill. So I had that payment plan in place. And then I finally called and said, I can't pay this anymore. So they delayed the payment and then they put it in smaller payments for the same overall amount since I had already paid half of the bill. And then I put my pride down and said, I actually need food stamps and I need to apply. So I just got that in place and I'm waiting for that to come through. I'm going to these real estate Christmas parties, trying to look fabulous. And then I got my little food stamps card in my wallet. So
that's okay.
Listen,
please.
I'm glad you mentioned food stamps because I was going to ask about food banks or any other, even rental assistance programs. Mm-hmm. I know that the moratorium on evictions because of the pandemic, there were nationwide and statewide moratoriums where they wouldn't evict people. Those have now expired, but for the most part. But in Georgia and in Atlanta, what sort of rental assistance programs might there be that you could apply for? Have you looked into those?
That is an excellent question. I did apply to rental assistance. However, they are so behind. They cut off the date for the last application just a month or two ago. And I just got my application in right before the deadline. But because they're so backed up, they haven't sent me a message. I haven't been assigned a processor. So I'm just waiting. And my rent is late. And they don't understand that I have to wait and they have to wait. It doesn't make sense. So I have my court date of when I will go get the eviction. And hopefully that the rental assistance comes before the court date.
Is there a way you could update the rental assistance people on, my court date's coming up, this is happening, it's real, I'm about to be...
Yes, there's a third party. They can't see your application and you can't talk to the processors there, but you can say this application needs to be expedited because she has a court date coming up.
You want to be a squeaky wheel,
yes.
I feel with this situation. I get it, though. It's emotionally exhausting and you have to be on top of everything yourself. It's like whack-a-mole, financial whack-a-mole. There's an episode of the podcast. I don't know if you listened to it. And I should have Googled the name. There's an episode of Brown Ambition where I had a realtor who has a show on HGTV. God, what's her name? It was incredible. I don't know if you heard that episode, but she was a realtor during the Great Recession, during the housing crisis of 2006 through 8. And her savior, she said, was she got, they had these like little known jobs within the U.S. housing department through HUD and other like federal agencies where they're looking for people to like sell foreclosures and like do this sort of like government contract work. That's not like the sexy realtor jobs, but she was like, this is how I paid my bills during this time when no one was selling and, you know, my listings went down. So that may be an idea. I'm going to find that episode for you. So I'm just sitting here like, what was her name?
Thank you, Mandy. I would love to do that. I also do, you know, referrals. So if anyone in another state needs a realtor, I have a team of realtors that I can just connect them with. And that would be something I could do in France and while I'm building up my business. So, or if I just
Paige
stay here,
Turner.
yeah.
And just know
her name is Paige Turner.
Paige Turner. I'll look up that episode. That is something I would love to do here in the United States as well.
And just think about it this way, that there are moments when you can put a Band-Aid on something, and there are moments when the decision has to be bigger, like it's an amputee. You know what I mean?
It feels like that.
And so know when you have to jump over, where it's like, I've done enough bandages and it's just not enough that I have to do something drastic, you know? And so we're afraid to do that. And I get that, you know, and it's okay to start with bandages. But if you feel like, you know what, which it sounds like, you know, you're not just sitting on your hands, you've done a lot of work already. So what it just means, it's an indicator that it might require a big overture. You know, it might require like moving or bankruptcy, you know, filing for bankruptcy, you know, it might require that. That's what it sounds like you're getting to. And what's on the other side of that, at least, is you can start to work toward freedom. It seems so big and so bad. And I look back at it now. I mean, I tried everything not to lose my house. And then I did. And I was like, oh, okay. It wasn't so, you know what I mean? Like, because here I am now. I'm in a house now. You know what I mean? And it was like, knowing what I know now, I'm not going to lie. I wish I would have let it go sooner, because I threw tens of thousands of dollars at a house that I was no longer going to keep. Like at least $30,000, because I took all the money out of my retirement account, put it toward the house to save it, only to lose it. And I was like, oh man, I could have lost it the year prior or whatever and kept my $30,000. You know, and so sometimes the bandages do more harm than good. So just consider that, like, you know what, it might be time to take this big leap, because these bandages might actually just be elongating, you know, and making the situation worse.
Well, this is confirmation. I really appreciate that. Everything you guys have said, I'm going to apply and get moving.
We're glad you
literally,
on, Tina.
You have everything you need to bounce back. Yes. Thank you for being so candid and for sharing so openly too. Because I know that you're not alone, and there's so many people out there silently going through what you're going through, and they're ashamed of it. And I feel like owning your story, and this is just the beginning, and you're going to have a fabulous comeback story, like, you know, like Tiff, like everyone else in their lives. Like, you're going to be great.
Thank you. I'm living up to my name, Real Talk Tina, trying to be as authentic as possible and real. So here I am.
It's the only way you get real advice. Yeah, real guidance. So.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Thank you. Just for me, this is going to help so many people, because a lot of people don't want to say the struggle they're going through, and so you coming on and sharing it is really going to free someone else to say, "Me too." And this was really helpful. So thank you, Tina. Thank you for real talk.
Now, if you are looking to sell a home in Atlanta, where can they find you, Tina? Just in case we got some listeners.
Oh yes, I'm in Atlanta. You can find me. I live in Midtown right now. Yeah, but you can find me on Real Talk Tina on any social media platform, YouTube, IG, TikTok.
Okay.
And my blog.
Tina. Okay, awesome.
All right, fabulous. If y'all got real estate needs, talk to Tina, okay?
All right, y'all. If you want to be in the hot seat over here at BAQA, you can, maybe. You have to be like Tina and send us either an email to brownambitionpodcast.com. There is a ask us anything or contact us. And so you can send a note there. We can read your stuff aloud, and you can hit us up on Instagram, Brown Ambition Podcast. And if you send us a voice note, our producer, Imani, will take a listen. And she thinks you're fit. She'll invite you into studio. You guys can chat with us. So hopefully you enjoyed.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank
you. It was nice to meet you.
Hey, BA fam, we could not do this show without your support or the support of our team behind the scenes. The Brown Ambition podcast is produced by Cumulus Podcast Network. It's edited by the wonderful Imani Crosby and produced by Tanya Bustos. Dennis Stemplinsky is our in-house tech guru, and I am Mandy Woodruff Santos, your co-host, and I will see y'all next week.
You're worried about the economy. Inflation is high. Your paycheck doesn't cover as much as it used to. And we live under the threat of a looming recession. And sure, you're doing okay, but you could be doing better.
The Afford Anything podcast explains the economy and the market, detailing how to make wise choices on the way you spend and invest.
Afford Anything talks about how to avoid common pitfalls, how to refine your mental models, and how to think about how to think.
Make smarter choices and build a better life.
Afford Anything, wherever you listen.